Hello and welcome back to the SME Corporate Governance Bootcamp. And today is the sixth in our series of video blogs, and we'll be looking at the whole area of complexity in your business and discussing some ideas and some tools that you can use to reduce complexity across the business. There's never been a more important time to look at the opportunity to simplify your business model, because today redundant complexity is simply adding cost and confuses everybody both internally and externally to the organization. So I want to look at a number of focus areas around complexity, and there are three that I'm going to focus on today. The first is product complexity, which impacts the supply chain, and that's looking at the opportunity to reduce the products in your organization to simplify the offering. The second is the customer complexity, which is impact on sales and marketing and a whole host of other areas, and looking at your customer portfolio and making some decisions to simplify that. And the third area is the whole area of process complexity, which is all around the cost to serve those customers. In other words, to bring those products and services to your customers, and looking at the processes and the complexity there are in those processes and trying to simplify it. At the end of the day, complexity, if it's not properly governed and managed, will bring about significant cost, unwanted cost, and waste across the value chain. It will also cause confusion internally in the organization and externally when you're dealing with suppliers, customers, and other third parties. Too much complexity means there is reduced control in terms of governing the organization. And lastly, and especially these days, too much complexity has a severe negative impact on the whole area of cash flow. Now, the key insight we're trying to differentiate with today is the difference between good complexity, which adds value and competitive advantage, versus bad complexity, which doesn't and incurs all those costs I've just mentioned. So the governance riff we're focusing on today is trying to remove bad complexity from the business. Now, when it comes to analysing complexity in your business, there are a whole host of tools and techniques that are available out there. But one tool that I would like to discuss today is the whole use of the Pareto analysis across your business. And Pareto was an Italian economist, and he came up with the basic economic tenet that 80% of impact comes from 20% of causes. And translating that into a business context, it means 80% of the value in your business comes from 20% of the sources. So with some good analysis using reliable and accurate data, you will be able to quickly see where that value lies and where the cost of complexity lies. And if you look at the last 20% of your business, that is what I'm going to call the tail of the business, where there is an increasingly diminishing level of value as you go further along that tail. And if you look at the top 20% of your business, that simply means that's where a significant level of profit comes from. And the mantra we're trying to establish today is looking at the top 20% of your business and preserving that, building that, strengthening that, defending that, and looking at the bottom 20% of your business, and that's the whole area of managing the tail. And in that sense, you have to be ruthless. Now, in order to do this decision and to make these decisions properly, you must have the right level of data in your business. And so the management information systems or other sources of data will be critical to pull this data together so that you end up with data-led decision making. Now, turning to these three areas, I'm going to try and delve a little bit more deeply into them. When you look at product complexity, this is depending on whether you're supplying a product, and that is in the case of manufacturing organizations, or you're providing a service, and that is in the case of service organizations. And I just want to make some definitional point here that typically customers buy products and clients buy services. But I'll use those interchangeably to try and make sure that the points apply as widely as possible. So firstly, turning to product complexity, it's important to look at what they call the profitability by SKU. An SKU is a stock keeping unit, and that is defined as a brand and pack combination. So if you have a product and it is in a 1 kilo or 1 liter or 1 milligram pack, then that is defined as one stock keeping unit. And what we're asking you to do is to look at the whole level and array of your products and break them down into stock keeping units, and look at the level of profitability, probably at a gross margin level, for the whole portfolio of products that you have in your business. And that should be an analysis that takes place over the last 12 months, though you might want to do it over the last 24 months, depending on the nature of your business. Similarly, for services, you can look at the range of services that you provide as an organization to your clients, and you can look at the average profitability in each service line, probably again to the gross margin level. And once you have graphed that data, you will then see how the top 20% lie and the bottom 20% lie. Moving on to customer complexity, again, take the portfolio of your customers, be it 100 customers, be it 1,000 customers, be it 5,000 customers, and look over the last 12 months of your customer base and look at the profitability of each customer, probably again to the gross margin line, or if you can go lower, then that's all about the level of MIS that you have in your organization. And again, you will look at the top 20% of your customers and the bottom 20% of your customers, and you will see where the profitability and where the challenges lie. And lastly is the whole area of process complexity. And here it's all about looking at how much it costs to serve those customers. And you'll be looking at everything from the average cost of sales to serve those customers, the average cost of logistics, the average cost of administration, and this will be looking at things like invoicing and documentation, etc. There will be also processes associated with compliance and legal requirements, etc., etc. So look at all the costs that are involved in serving an individual customer. And again, you will understand the net profit of those customers after the gross margin line once you have added the true cost to serve those customers. So if you do that analysis, what you'll be able to do for your products, your customers, and the net profit for your customers, you will be able to frame the tale of both your products and your customers at 20%, the bottom 20%. And then the next step in the process is to look at the tail, the bottom 20%, and take a strategic look to say, if I was to cut or remove that bottom 20%, either in products or customers, what would be the impact? And to understand how I might go about looking at alternatives in order to simplify the products and customers I have in the organization. So for example, in the case of SKUs, you may want to offer your customers alternative packs and try and have discussions with them so that they are transferred away from the low 20% of your SKUs into higher earning, higher profitability categories. And similarly, you might look at your customers and you might say, is there a cheaper way we can service those customers? Can you look at telesales? Can you look at appointing distributors? Can you look at passing some of that customer complexity to third parties, call centers, whatever it is? Look at alternatives and be creative so that you don't simply leave those hard-earned customers and cut them loose. You find other ways to serve those customers at a reduced cost and at a reduced level of process complexity. And then from there, once you've looked at your products and your customer complexity at the lower 20%, you can define an action plan for your products and you can define an action plan for your customers to basically go and have those discussions, take those actions over an agreed time frame in order to implement the decisions that you've come to. And for the future, you can also, through this process, you can begin to map out and define criteria that you'll put in place whereby new customers will be added that meet those criteria and new customers will be added that meet those criteria. And if either the products or the customers you want to bring into the business don't meet those future criteria, then you won't take them on, or you will find a way of making sure they do meet the criteria or simply walking away. Now, this process is a big process depending on the size and complexity of the organization, but it's an extremely illuminating product to go into this deep dive of the data relating to your products, your customers, and your processes. It's very important that this is an inclusive process involving people up and down the organization so that you have the right data, you have the right discussions, and you have the right actions arising from the analysis. So it's very important that if you're looking at cutting products, you have a perspective both from the beginning and from the end of the supply chain so that you make wise decisions and you come up with alternatives. Similarly, looking at customers, you don't want to walk away from customers easily. You want to make sure that you're involved in the sales and marketing teams. You are looking at the thing strategically so you make wise decisions about reducing your customer complexity. And of course, if you're going to reduce the process complexity, then there will be implications for perhaps manpower, there will be implications for your offices and your logistics and other areas of the business. So it requires a deep think and a deep dive in order to arrive at the action plan and to move forward on all of this analysis. And I come back to that governance RIF, measure twice and cut once. So when you're going to start to make some of the high level decisions, make sure you have implemented that, measuring twice and cut once. And start with the low hanging fruit so that you get a feel for the process. Perhaps start in areas which are less risky, or there is a less or lower cost of regret if it's wrongly implemented. So you can get your discussions with suppliers, for example, if you're looking at reducing products, and you can use that as a test at a low level of risk. In doing so, then you are preparing for having some of those bigger, more complex, more difficult discussions. And similarly, looking at some of your customers and reducing that customer portfolio. Start in areas which are less risky, lower cost of regret, and then you'll build up confidence and you'll build up agility in getting those discussions where the stakes are higher later on, in getting those discussions right. So, to wrap up, I hope that this discussion has inspired you to look at complexity across your business. And I repeat the governance riff: to build good complexity where it's profitable and where it gives you competitive advantage, and cut out bad complexity where it's adding cost, negatively affecting your cash flow and confusing the organization. The tool we've discussed today is the Pareto analysis, and that requires good data, and you can focus on your products, your customers and your process in order to arrive at a set of defined tails in each of those areas, and then you can agree some of the actions that you need to take and put in place the future criteria that you're going to use to bring on new products and new customers into the organization. Now, this is an ongoing process, and it's really important that the leadership takes this process seriously and stays closely connected with it and supports the decisions and the outcomes that arise from the process. And I assure you, if you look at complexity in the business, the level of decision making will improve, and you will identify really good opportunities to simplify your business model. So I hope that's been useful, and as usual, I'll ask you to give me some feedback by contacting me at the email address there or connecting via Twitter. Our next topic will be focusing the leadership team, and I look forward to that. Thanks very much.